please? Do it quick, she begged as the billionaire cleaned her wound on the cold cabin floor. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night the storm hit, the wind sliced through the Montana mountains like razor-thin knives, carrying sheets of snow that swallowed the forest whole. Emily Carter, though no one in that moment cared about her last name, gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her old pickup trembled under every gust, headlights fighting to cut through the thick white wall ahead. She had driven through winter storms before as a delivery runner, but never one that felt this angry, this alive. And she knew she should have turned back an hour before. But when your rent is due tomorrow, and your mom's medical bills pile up like snowdrifts against the door, you take the last job of the night, no matter how stupid it looks. The radio crackled with warnings she couldn't afford to obey. Her phone had lost signal 15 minutes ago. And the road, well, the road had disappeared completely. When the pickup suddenly fishtailed on a patch of black ice, Emily didn't even have time to scream. The world flipped. Metal shrieked. Snow exploded through the cracked side window as the truck spun off the shoulder and slammed nose first into a drift. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating, eerie. Emily groaned, pushing herself upright. Pain shot up her right leg like a lightning bolt. Warmth trickled down her calf. Blood. A lot more than she wanted to see in a snowstorm. She shoved the door open and stumbled out, breath puffing white under the freezing air. The cold sank its teeth into her instantly. Great, perfect, she muttered, limping around the wrecked truck. No signal. No light. No road. Just endless dark trees and a storm that looked ready to bury the world. She tried walking. 10 steps in, her injured leg buckled, dropping her to her knees. Snow soaked through her jeans, stealing her. Heat. Her vision blurred. She pressed a shaking hand against her thigh, whispering, "Not now, please, not now." That was when she heard it. Footsteps. Crunching steadily through the snow. Slow. Intentional. Not an animal. A man stepped into view, a dark silhouette against the storm, snow clinging to his coat and hair. He held a flashlight, but his face stayed in shadow. "Hey!" His voice cut through the wind, deep, steady, edged with urgency. "Don't move. You're hurt." Emily blinked up, dizzy. I just need to get back to the road." "There is no road anymore," he said, crouching beside her. The beam of his flashlight swept over her leg. He hissed softly. "You're bleeding through your jeans. You won't last 10 minutes out here." She wanted to argue, but the cold stole her breath before the words formed. The stranger didn't waste time. He slid one arm under her knees, the other behind her back, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Heat radiated from him, shockingly warm against the brutal wind, as he carried her through the trees. "Where are we going?" she managed. "Shelter," he answered simply. Snow battered his shoulders, but he moved like a man used to pushing through storms. After several minutes, long enough for her teeth to chatter uncontrollably, he shouldered open the warped door of an old hunting cabin. The hinges groaned. The dark swallowed them. He kicked it shut with his boot, lowering her onto a rough wooden floor. The cold from the planks shot through her, and she gasped. He struck a match. A small lantern flared to life, casting golden light over the cabin's cramped interior. And only then did she see his face, sharp jawline dusted with snow, dark hair dripping meltwater, eyes a deep, unreadable blue. He knelt beside her, pulling a pocket knife from his coat. Her breath caught. What are you doing?" "Cutting the fabric. I need to clean the wound." "You said you want to survive, right?" She swallowed hard, nodding. He sliced her torn jeans open around the wound. Emily flinched as the cold air hit raw skin. "This will hurt," he warned quietly, preparing the antiseptic kit he'd pulled from an emergency pack. "Please," she whispered, gripping the floorboards, "do it quick." When the antiseptic touched her skin, white-hot pain shot up her leg, but his hands were steady, precise, almost gentle beneath the urgency. Through clenched teeth, she watched him work, focused, methodical, strangely familiar with emergency care. Who was this man? And why did someone dressed like a drifter carry supplies like a trained medic? The storm howled outside, rattling the cabin walls, as the stranger leaned closer and whispered, almost to himself, "You're going to be okay. I've got you." And for the first time that night, Emily wasn't sure what terrified her more, the storm outside, or the mystery sitting right in front of her. Outside, the storm pounded the roof of the cabin like a giant beating on a drum, but inside, Emily could feel only the heat of the lantern and the sting of antiseptic dragging fire through her leg. The stranger worked with calm focus, tearing a strip of clean fabric from the emergency kit, wrapping it tightly around her thigh to slow the bleeding. His breath came out in visible clouds, mixing with hers in the cold air. For a moment, she watched him in silence, studying the way his jaw clenched when she winced, as if her pain somehow lived inside him too. "You move like you have done this before," she whispered, voice thin. He paused, eyes flicking up to hers, unreadable. "I move like someone who has seen too many storms." It was not an answer, not really, but she was too exhausted to push. He tightened the bandage with a slow, steady pull, then checked her pulse with 2 fingers against her wrist. His touch was warm, steady, confident. Much too confident for someone who looked like he had been wandering the mountains alone. Emily exhaled shakily, trying to distract herself from the pulsing pain in her leg. "What were you doing out there? In the middle of a blizzard?" He hesitated for half a second, just long enough for her to notice. "Getting away from something," he said finally. "Or maybe someone." The vagueness unsettled her, but the warmth in his voice did not feel dangerous. "Troubled, maybe. Wounded in a place no bandage could reach." The lantern flickered, casting shadows that danced across the wooden walls. Emily pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders, shivering as the cold crept back in. The stranger noticed immediately. Without a word, he shrugged off his own coat and draped it over her. It was heavy, lined with thick fleece, far too expensive looking for someone who seemed to be wandering the mountains alone. She traced a seam with her fingers, realizing the stitching was intricate, custom. Not store-bought. This man was not who he appeared to be. "What is your name?" she asked softly. He froze. Just for a breath. Then he said, "Call me James." She felt the lie like a shift in the air, but pain and exhaustion made her too weary to question it. At least he had given her something to hold on to. "James," she murmured, letting the name settle on her tongue. "Thank you." "If you had not found me," he cut her off gently. "I did. That is all that matters." The flames in the tiny stove crackled to life as he fed it scraps of old firewood, and warmth slowly spread across the room. Emily leaned back against the wall, fighting sleep. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy as wet snow. "Stay awake," James instructed quietly. "You hit the truck hard. You might have a concussion." She forced her eyes open. "I am trying." He moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body through the thick coat. Close enough that the storm outside felt a world away. His voice softened. "Talk to me. It will keep you awake. Tell me where you were headed." Emily swallowed. "My last delivery of the night. I needed the money. I always need the money." He listened without interrupting, his expression tightening slightly as she explained how every paycheck evaporated into rent, groceries, and medical bills for her mother back home. "That is why I kept going, even when the snow got bad," she whispered. "I could not afford to turn around. I thought I could make it. I always think I can make it." Something in James's face shifted, a flicker of pain or recognition, but he looked away before she could understand it. Sometimes, he said quietly, the strongest thing you can do is stop trying to outrun the storm. Emily let out a shaky breath, not sure if he meant the snowstorm or the one inside her life. Maybe both. The wind roared again, rattling the door on its rusty hinges. James tensed, head snapping toward the sound as if expecting someone to break it down. His jaw tightened. His breath quickened just barely. It was the first sign of fear she had seen in him. Emily blinked in confusion. "James, what are you running from?" He opened his mouth, then shut it again, eyes dark. "Nothing you need to worry about." But his shoulders stayed rigid, like a man waiting for the past to find him. Emily shivered. Not from the cold this time, but from the sense that she was sharing a cabin not just with a stranger, but with someone carrying a truth heavy enough to bury them both in that storm. The storm outside did not let up. If anything, it grew louder, angrier, as if the mountains themselves were warning them that no one would be leaving that cabin until nature decided otherwise. Emily shifted, pain rippling through her leg, but James reached out with a steady hand, pressing gently against her knee to keep her still. "Do not move too much," he murmured. "The bleeding has slowed, but if you tear the bandage, we will be in trouble." His calm tone should have soothed her, but the tension in his shoulders told a different story. Emily watched him as he stood and paced the small cabin, his shadow stretching across the walls with every swing of the lantern. He was listening for something. Or someone. Finally, she whispered, "James, does someone know you are out here?" His jaw tightened again, the same way it had when the wind slammed the door earlier. "I told you. There is nothing to worry about." But he said it like someone trying to convince himself. Emily wanted to push, to ask who or what he was hiding from, but another pulse of pain in her leg stole her breath. He was at her side instantly, kneeling again, checking the bandage. His fingers brushed her skin, warm and careful. Too careful for a man who claimed he was just a wanderer. "You are burning up," he said softly. "Your body is reacting to the cold and the injury. You need to rest a little." She shook her head stubbornly. "You told me not to sleep." "Not sleep deeply," he corrected. "Just lean on me. Stay awake, but rest." His voice held a warmth she had not noticed before, a gentleness that did not match the guarded way he kept glancing at the door. Emily slowly let her head fall against the wooden wall, her eyes following him as he checked the small cabin again. The stove. The windows. The latch on the door. As if expecting it to break open at any second. "James," she tried again, her voice hoarse, "were you hiking? Camping? What were you doing this far out?" He exhaled, long and heavy. For a moment, she thought he might finally give her an honest answer. "I needed space," he said, but this time his tone held emotion, something raw. "Everyone wanted something from me. I could not breathe. I needed somewhere no one would follow." That was not a normal thing for a wanderer to say. Emily frowned, her tired mind pulling at the threads of his story. The expensive coat. The emergency kit. The way he moved like someone trained. The way the name James sounded borrowed. And the strange fear in his eyes whenever the storm hit the cabin door. Nothing made sense. The lantern flickered low again, and James grabbed another match to relight it, but when he struck it, the flame trembled in the small breeze leaking through the cracked window. "Storm is worsening," he murmured, staring out through the frost-glazed glass. "Road will not be cleared until morning, maybe later." Emily swallowed hard. "Do you think we are safe here?" He nodded slowly. "For now. But you need warmth." He took his coat back from her shoulders, only to unfold it and wrap it around her more securely this time, tucking the edges around her arms and sides. His hands were steady, but she could feel the tremor under the surface. Fear. He was afraid of something, and it was not the storm. After settling her, he sat on the floor beside her, his back against the same wall, only a few inches between them. The warmth of his body seeped through the coat, making her shiver less. For a while, they listened to the wind together, the silence between them fragile but strangely comforting. Emily finally broke it. "You saved my life." James let out a short breath, almost a laugh. "You make it sound heroic." "It was just the right thing to do." "Maybe," she whispered, "but you carry yourself like someone who has done a lot more than the right thing. I think you have saved people before." He did not answer. His eyes stayed on the flames in the stove, shadows flickering across his face. Then, very quietly, he said, "I have saved people. But I have also failed people." There was so much weight in those words that it made Emily's chest tighten. She wanted to ask more, but he looked away, shutting the door on the subject. A loud crack from outside made her jump. James was on his feet instantly, flashlight in hand, body tense like a wire pulled too tight. "What was that?" Emily breathed. "Probably just a branch falling," he said, but his voice carried no certainty. He stepped to the door and pressed his ear to the wood, listening. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, colder, as if the storm itself was holding its breath. Emily gripped the edge of her coat, heart pounding. Something told her the danger outside had nothing to do with the weather. And whatever James was running from, it was getting closer. James stood perfectly still, every muscle locked, his ear pressed to the door as if he could decode the storm itself. Emily held her breath, the cold air burning her lungs while fear crawled up her spine. The wind howled again, but beneath it she could swear she heard something else, something sharper, a sound that did not belong to the wilderness. James finally stepped back from the door, but instead of relaxing, he moved immediately to the window, brushing frost aside with his sleeve to peer through the narrow crack in the glass. His jaw tightened. "James," Emily whispered, her voice trembling, "what did you see?" He did not answer at first. He stayed frozen, staring into the swirling white outside. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, far too calm to be comforting. "There are lights in the woods. Not the kind that belong out here." Emily blinked, confused. "Lights? You mean like flashlights?" He nodded once. "And engines? Snowmobiles, maybe a mile off." Her heart stuttered. "Are they search and rescue?" James's silence told her everything she needed to know. Rescue teams did not make him flinch. These lights did. He turned away from the window and went to the stove, throwing more wood inside as if trying to build a barrier of warmth and noise. Emily swallowed hard. "James, who is out there?" He crouched in front of the fire, staring into the flames as he searched for words. "People who want something from me," he finally said, "and are willing to go to any extreme to get it." That answer made no sense, yet it explained everything: the expensive coat, the emergency gear, the tension that lived beneath his calm exterior. Emily shifted, trying to sit up straighter despite the stabbing pain in her leg. "Are you in trouble?" James let out a bitter breath. "Trouble is one word for it." "Are they dangerous?" she pressed. His gaze met hers. Even in the dim lantern light, she saw the truth. "Yes." A shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. She reached instinctively for the coat wrapped around her, pulling it tight. "Should we hide? Should we put out the lantern? Should we leave?" "Leaving is not an option," he said gently. "You can barely stand." He was right, but fear did not care. "Then what do we do?" James stood and moved toward her, his step slow, controlled. He knelt beside her, gripping the floorboards with one hand as he leaned closer. "Emily, listen carefully. No matter what happens, I will not let anyone hurt you." The certainty in his voice hit her like a wave of heat in the freezing room. She believed him, though she did not know why. Just then, a sharp crack echoed outside, like metal slamming into ice. Emily jumped again. James instantly rose, crossing the cabin in 3 quick strides to lift a heavy wooden bar and reinforce the door. He checked the small window latch twice, tightening it with a quick twist. As he worked, Emily watched him with growing dread. His movements were efficient, practiced. Not frantic. Not panicked. Trained. Whoever he was, he had done this before. James, she whispered, you said those people want something from you. What could you possibly have that they would chase you through a storm for? His back stiffened, but he did not turn around. A company, he said quietly. Half of one, at least. Control of it. Influence. Decisions that affect thousands. Emily stared, confused. What are you talking about? He finally turned to face her. For the first time that night, she saw something unguarded in his eyes, a truth slipping through the cracks. I am not just someone looking for space, he said. I left because the people closest to me wanted to use me. And some of them did not want me alive to sign the papers I was refusing to sign. Emily's breath caught. Papers? What kind of papers? Documents that would hand over everything my father left to me, he said, voice tight. Control of Carter Industries. Emily's mind blanked. Carter Industries. The name slammed into her like a blast of wind. Everyone knew that name. A company worth billions, with a headquarters that towered over downtown Denver. She stared at him, suddenly seeing the tailored coat, the confidence in his hands, the guarded grief behind his eyes. James was not James. Her pulse pounded as she whispered, "Who are you really?" He hesitated for a long, heavy beat, then exhaled the truth. "My real name is Jacob Carter," he said quietly. "And the people out there, they are not here to rescue us. They are here to make sure I never go home again." Emily felt the world tilt, not from her injury, but from the realization that she was trapped in a blizzard with a billionaire heir whose enemies were now closing in through the storm. For a long moment, Emily could not breathe. Jacob Carter. The name echoed in her mind, clashing violently with the man kneeling in front of her, the man who had carried her through a blizzard and wrapped his coat around her shaking shoulders. She stared at him, trying to reconcile the billionaire heir she had seen once on a news broadcast with the stranger who had pressed his ear to the cabin door moments earlier, listening for danger like a hunted man. "You should have told me," she whispered, her voice trembling not from the cold but from the weight of the truth settling over her. Jacob exhaled, shoulders sinking. "I know. But people treat me differently when they know who I am. They assume I have all the answers. They assume I am safe. And tonight, I am not." Outside, the distant engines roared again, louder now, close enough for the vibrations to travel through the frozen ground and into the cabin floor. Emily felt the boards tremble beneath her palms. Jacob moved toward the window once more, wiping another streak of frost so he could see out. His body blocked most of the lantern light, but she could see just enough of his expression to recognize something she had not expected from a man like him. Fear. Genuine, sharp-edged fear. "Why would they chase you?" she asked. "Why would anyone come after you through a storm like this?" Jacob hesitated, as if sorting through too many answers. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, like the truth could shatter if spoken too loudly. "My father left me controlling shares of Carter Industries. My uncle believes they should belong to him. He tried to push documents in front of me, key agreements that would hand him the company. I refused to sign. So he made sure I disappeared before the board meeting next week." Emily felt her stomach drop. "You think your own family wants you dead?" Jacob looked at her then, a quiet sadness filling his eyes, the kind that came from a wound far deeper than the weather outside. "I know they do. And if they find this cabin, they will not care that you are with me." Fear seized her chest, cold and biting. The storm outside no longer felt like the enemy. The real danger was human and approaching fast. Jacob knelt before her again, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching, as if he feared he might break her if he did. "Emily, I need you to trust me. I promised I would not let anything happen to you, and I meant it. But if they reach the cabin, things will get dangerous quickly." She swallowed hard. "What can we do? I can barely stand." "You said we cannot run." "We will not run," he said, his voice firming. "But we can prepare. He stood and reached for the lantern, turning the flame lower until the room dimmed to a muted amber glow. The less they can see from outside, the better. He grabbed an old blanket from the corner and draped it over the window, blocking the flicker of light entirely. Then he returned to the door, checking the wooden bar that held it shut. Emily watched him in silence, her thoughts spinning. This was no longer just a storm or an accident. She was inside something far larger, standing on the edge of a danger she had never imagined. When Jacob returned to her side, he sat down slowly, careful not to jar her injured leg. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind screamed against the roof, snow beating the wood like fists. The storm was a living creature now, raging around them. "I am sorry," Jacob said softly. "I never meant for you to be caught in this." Emily shook her head. "You saved my life. I would be frozen in that truck if not for you." He looked at her, his eyes holding a softness she had not noticed earlier. "And I intend to keep saving it." The word settled over her, warm enough to push the cold back from her bones. But then another sound tore through the night, a sharp mechanical growl, closer than before. Jacob stiffened. "They are near," he whispered. The engines cut out. Silence followed. Heavy. Expectant. Someone was out there. Several someones. Emily's pulse hammered, each beat a painful reminder of how exposed they were. Jacob reached for the small metal tool he had set near the stove earlier, a makeshift weapon, but better than nothing. He checked the door one last time, then moved to sit beside her again, placing himself between her and the entrance. Outside, footsteps crunched in the snow. Not one pair. Multiple. Slow. Intentional. Emily's breath caught. Jacob leaned closer, his whisper barely audible. "No matter what happens, stay behind me." She nodded, fingers trembling as she gripped the coat around her. The lantern flickered. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. And in that frozen moment, Emily realized she was not just witnessing Jacob's secret world. She was trapped inside it. The footsteps outside the cabin door were slow and deliberate, crunching through the snow with a weight that made Emily's pulse hammer in her ears. Jacob shifted slightly, placing one hand on the floor to steady himself and the other near the metal tool he had chosen as a weapon. His body formed a shield in front of her, broad shoulders blocking her from the door completely. For several long seconds, the cabin was silent except for the wind pushing against the walls and the uneven breathing Emily could not control. Then came the first knock. It was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was confident, slow, the kind of knock made by someone who already believed they were on the winning side of whatever game was being played. Jacob stiffened at the sound. Emily felt him tense like a drawn bowstring. "Jacob," a voice called from outside, muffled but unmistakably calm, as if this were nothing more than a social visit. "We know you are in there." Emily's breath froze. In her chest. Jacob did not answer, he did not even move. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek as the voice continued. "Your father's legacy does not belong to you. It is time to stop running." Emily's hand flew to her mouth, pressing down to stifle a gasp. Jacob leaned closer to her, whispering so softly she barely heard him over the storm. "Do not speak. Do not make a sound." The person outside knocked again, harder this time. "You have made things very difficult, Jacob," the voice said. "Let us in so we can discuss your future like civilized men." Jacob's whisper carried a sharp edge as he breathed, "There is nothing civilized about them." Emily felt the truth of that in the way his voice shook, just barely, beneath the control he fought to maintain. The handle on the door rattled suddenly, jerking once, twice, as someone tested the lock. The heavy wooden bar held, but the force behind the movement made the frame shudder. Emily flinched, her injured leg throbbing painfully, but Jacob steadied her with a gentle hand against her arm. "Stay with me," he whispered. "It will be all right." The certainty in his voice was thin, but it was all she had. After a moment, the rattling stopped, replaced by the sound of muffled conversation outside. Several men, at least 3 from the voices. One of them said, "We should break the door." Another replied, "Not in this storm. If he fights back and the cabin collapses, we lose the body. And we need proof." Emily's stomach twisted violently. Proof? Proof of what? Proof that Jacob had died out here? She felt the room spin, panic clawing at her throat. Jacob heard the same thing she did. She saw it in the way his shoulders tightened and the faint tremor in his breath. "They want to stage it like an accident," he whispered, voice breaking through the darkness. "A winter tragedy. An unfortunate disappearance." Emily grasped the edge of his coat, unable to hide her fear anymore. "Jacob, what can we do? They will break in eventually." He shook his head. "Not without making noise. The storm is loud, but inside this cabin, we will hear them before they are through." "And then what?" she whispered, her voice trembling. His eye softened, even with danger closing in. "Then I make sure. You live. Whatever it takes." Her throat tightened painfully. Before she could speak, the footsteps moved around the cabin, circling it, crunching in the snow as the men searched for another way in. Jacob followed the sound, his body turning slightly toward each window, calculating. The lantern's flame flickered in the draft, shadows trembling across the rough wooden walls. Emily felt tiny, fragile, like the cabin itself, held together by thin boards and hope. Finally, the footsteps faded back toward the trees. The men were still close, but for now they were waiting. Watching. Jacob exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. "This storm saved us," he murmured. "They cannot risk freezing to death before they get what they came for." Emily swallowed hard. "And what happens when the storm stops?" Jacob's expression darkened, the weight of his world settling on his shoulders again. "Then they will come back," he said softly. "And when they do, everything changes for both of us." The storm raged on through the night, but inside the cabin the air felt unbearably still, as if the world itself was holding its breath along with Emily. The footsteps outside had faded, but she could still feel them like an echo inside her bones, a reminder that danger waited just beyond the thin wooden walls. Jacob sat beside her again, but this time he did not try to hide the tension in his body. His hands were clasped together, knuckles white, and his eyes stayed fixed on the darkened window as if expecting a shadow to appear there at any moment. Emily forced herself to take slow breaths, but each one felt shallow. Her leg pulsed with heat and pain, and nausea curled at the edges of her stomach. She closed her eyes for a moment, but Jacob's voice pulled her gently back. "Emily! Look at me!" She opened them to find him studying her closely. "You are getting worse," he said quietly. "The cold, the blood loss, the shock, you need real medical attention soon." She laughed weakly, the sound trembling. "In case you forgot, we are surrounded by men who want to kill you. I think the emergency room will have to wait." Jacob did not smile. "I am not worried about me. I am worried about you." Her breath caught in her throat again, but she looked away quickly, pretending she had not heard the emotion in his voice. "What happens when the storm stops?" she whispered. Jacob hesitated. "They will come back. And if they manage to get inside, I will not let them touch you." Emily's fear surged again. "Jacob, you cannot fight them alone. There are too many." "I have been underestimated before," he murmured, but she could see the exhaustion behind his eyes. He had not slept in at least a day, maybe more. His face was drawn, pale under the lantern light. He was strong, but he was also human. And the weight he was carrying was crushing him. Emily shifted slightly, biting down a groan as her leg flared with pain. Jacob immediately reached out, steadying her. His palm was warm against her shoulder, grounding her. "Why me?" she whispered suddenly. "Why did you carry me out of the storm when you could have kept running? You could have hidden somewhere safer." He blinked, surprised by the question. "Because I could not leave you there," he said simply. "You were hurt. Alone. Freezing. I could not walk away from that." She shook her head. But you knew helping me could slow you down. It could make things worse for you. His jaw tightened, and for the first time that night, he let the truth show without filtering it. Emily, if I had left you in that truck, I would have never forgiven myself. Running does not matter. Money does not matter. Power does not matter. But saving you, that mattered. Her breath faltered. She looked away again, the emotion too sharp to face. You barely know me. I know enough, he whispered. The wind hammered the cabin again, shaking the walls, drawing them both back into the present. Emily pulled the coat tighter around herself, feeling suddenly small inside the heavy, expensive fabric. Jacob, she said quietly, what if they do get inside? What happens then? He let out a long, steadying breath. Then I get you out. There is a back wall in this cabin that is loose. If I break it open, you can slip into the woods. The storm might hide your tracks. Her chest tightened painfully. And you? His silence was the answer she feared. Jacob, no, she whispered fiercely. You are not sacrificing yourself. I am not planning to, he said softly. But if it comes to it, I will do whatever I need to do to keep you alive. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, hot against the cold air. She blinked them away quickly, refusing to let them fall. Why are you doing this? She demanded in a broken whisper. I am a delivery driver who can barely pay rent. You are, I am a man, he interrupted gently, who owes you the truth. And the truth is that saving you was the first thing in a long time that felt right. Her heart stuttered, but before she could say anything, a sudden crack split the silence outside the cabin. Not thunder. Not wind. A branch snapping under weight. Heavy weight. Jacob's entire body went rigid. He reached for the metal tool again, gripping it tightly. Emily froze, pulse thundering in her ears. Outside, the footsteps began again, slower this time, careful, deliberate. They had returned. The storm was weakening just enough for danger to grow teeth again. Jacob looked at her one last time, his voice barely a breath. Stay behind me. No matter what you hear, do not run unless I tell you to. Emily nodded, her heart racing. The lantern flickered violently. The doorknob turned. And the nightmare they had feared all night finally began. The doorknob twisted slowly, the metal scraping against the latch with a sound that made Emily's blood turn to ice. Jacob rose to his feet in one smooth motion, positioning himself directly between her and the door, his shoulders squared, every muscle coiled tight. The storm outside had softened just enough to let the world hear again, which meant every sound echoed with dangerous clarity. Another turn of the doorknob. Then a low voice murmured to someone outside, "Force it." Emily's heart pounded so loudly she wondered if the men outside could hear it. Jacob stepped closer to the door, gripping the metal tool like he had trained for moments exactly like this. The wooden bar holding the door trembled as something heavy slammed against it, once, twice, each strike rattling dust from the ceiling. Emily's breath came in shallow bursts. Jacob, she whispered, they are going to break it. I know, he murmured, eyes locked on the door. Another blow. The hinges groaned. Jacob took a step back, calculating something she could not see. Then, suddenly, he turned to her. Emily. Listen to me. If they get through that door, go to the back wall. There is a panel near the floor that is loose. You can crawl through it. It will take you straight to the woods. She shook her head fiercely. I am not leaving you. This is not a negotiation, he said, his voice low, steady, heartbreaking in its resolve. I need you alive. I need you safe. Another violent crash shook the cabin, the bar splintered slightly. Emily could feel panic clawing at her throat, but Jacob's expression remained painfully calm. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. No matter what happens, remember that I meant what I said. Saving you mattered to me. More than you know. She opened her mouth to speak, but before a word could escape, the door exploded inward with a deafening crack. Snow and wind burst into the cabin along with two dark shapes. Jacob moved instantly, grabbing the nearest intruder by the arm and slamming him into the broken doorframe. The man cursed, swinging wildly, but Jacob blocked the blow, twisting the man's wrist until the weapon dropped into the snow-covered floorboards. Emily could only watch, frozen by fear and pain, as a second man lunged at Jacob from the side. Jacob turned just in time to deflect the hit, but the force sent him stumbling backward. The lantern flickered violently, casting chaotic shadows across the cabin. "Find the girl," one of the men barked. Emily's heart seized. Jacob heard it too, his expression hardened. "Over my dead body," he growled. The first man charged again, but Jacob shoved the metal tool into his ribs, sending him crashing into the stove with a howl of pain. The second man stepped toward Emily, reaching inside his coat as if for a weapon. Emily tried to crawl backward, but her injured leg buckled beneath her. Before the man could reach her, Jacob hurled himself forward, tackling the intruder to the ground. They wrestled violently, boots scraping across the wooden floor, fists slamming against bone. Emily watched in horror as the intruder reached for something silver on his belt. "Jacob, look out!" she cried. Jacob reacted instantly, knocking the man's hand away, then driving his elbow into the man's jaw with a force that left the intruder limp on the floor. The cabin fell silent except for Jacob's heavy breathing. But the silence did not last. Outside, more footsteps crunched through the snow. More voices. More danger. "There are more coming," Jacob said, grabbing Emily's arm gently but urgently. "We do not have time. We have to use the back exit now." Emily tried to stand but gasped as pain shot up her leg. Jacob lifted her without hesitation, his arms steady, strong, determined. He carried her to the back wall and kicked the loose panel free, revealing a narrow gap that opened to the storm outside. "I will get you through first," he said. "Then I will follow." Emily shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Jacob, I am scared." He pressed his forehead to hers for a brief, trembling moment. "So am I. But fear means we still want to live. And I promise you, we are going to fight for that." Voices shouted outside the cabin. Boots pounded closer. Jacob lifted her toward the opening. "Go, Emily. Now." And with the storm howling around them, she disappeared into the night, praying he would be right behind her. The night swallowed Emily the moment she slipped through the opening, the storm slashing at her face like icy blades. She crawled forward, snow soaking through her jeans instantly, the cold burning into her skin with unbearable sharpness. Behind her, Jacob's voice called softly, "Emily, move. I am right behind you." She pushed herself through the narrow space, emerging into the open woods just as the cabin behind her erupted with shouts. She turned back, breath trembling, expecting Jacob to follow immediately. But instead she heard a violent crash and the heavy thud of bodies colliding. Jacob was still inside. Panic surged through her chest. "Jacob," she whispered, but the storm stole her voice. She tried to stand, but her injured leg nearly buckled beneath her. Just as she forced herself upright, a shadow burst through the opening behind her. Jacob stumbled into the snow, grabbing the edges of the cabin wall to steady himself. Blood streaked the side of his face, mixing with snowflakes, but he was alive. "We have to go," he said, lifting her again without hesitation. He carried her into the tree line, his breath ragged, each step heavy with urgency. Shouts echoed behind them as the remaining men realized their prey had escaped. "They are coming," Emily whispered. "They are close." Jacob did not answer. His jaw tightened as he moved faster, weaving between trees while shielding her from branches and the raw biting wind. The forest floors blurred beneath them, and for a moment Emily thought he might collapse under the weight of exhaustion, injury, and fear. But he kept going. Every breath was a promise. Every step was a refusal to let the night take them. They reached a steep slope where the snow gathered deep between the rocks. Jacob stopped, chest heaving as he lowered her gently to the ground, leaning against a tree for balance. "I need to catch my breath," he said, each word strained. Just 1 minute. Emily touched his arm, realizing he was shaking violently, more from pain than cold. Jacob, you are hurt. He shook his head. I am fine. I just need, his voice faltered, and he pressed a hand to his ribs where the fabric of his coat was torn. Emily felt fear claw at her throat. Jacob, you saved me again. You have to let me help you now. But before he could respond, distant engines rumbled through the storm. The men were closing in. Jacob forced himself upright, grabbing her hands. Emily, listen to me. Down this slope is a ranger station. It is about half a mile away. If we can reach it, everything changes. She swallowed hard. Half a mile? In this storm? With my leg. I will carry you, he said, though his voice wavered under the weight of his own injuries. She shook her head fiercely. You cannot. You will collapse. Jacob looked at her with fierce determination. I will carry you until my legs give out. And then I will crawl. I am not letting them take you. Emily felt tears sting her eyes again. She reached up and cupped his cheek with trembling fingers. Jacob, please. You cannot save me if you die doing it. His breath caught. For the first time, she saw the flicker of fear not for himself, but for her. The engines grew louder. Voices called through the trees. Jacob pulled her close, his forehead pressing gently against hers, his voice breaking into the air between them. Emily, if anything happens to me, promise me you will keep going. Promise me you will live. She shook her head, tears falling. Do not talk like that. We are getting out together. Jacob closed his eyes, drawing in a breath that trembled. And then, a sound. Split through the night. Not from the men. From above. A helicopter. Floodlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the treetops, illuminating the storm in brilliant white. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker. This is the Montana Search and Rescue Unit. If you can hear us, stay where you are. Emily gasped. Jacob. Jacob, look. His eyes shot upward, disbelief spreading across his face. The helicopter dipped lower, circling them, its light fixed on their tiny shapes against the snow. They found us, he whispered. But it was not luck. It was not chance. Emily saw it the moment Jacob reached into his coat, pulling out a small beacon device, blinking weakly. She stared in shock. You activated it, when? When you went through the wall, he murmured. I knew they would chase us. I needed someone else chasing us too. Before she could respond, rescue officers in bright jackets emerged from the trees, rushing toward them. The men who hunted Jacob scattered back into the forest at the sight of them. Emily felt Jacob sag beside her, his strength finally slipping after hours of fighting. She reached for him desperately. Jacob, stay with me. He looked at her, his eyes soft, tired, full of something she had not expected to see from a billionaire who had spent his life surrounded by power and lies. We made it, Emily, he whispered. And I could not have done it without you. Then everything went white. Days later, in a warm hospital room, Emily opened her eyes to find Jacob standing beside her bed, clean, bandaged, and finally safe. He reached for her hand. Emily, I meant what I said in that cabin. Saving you mattered. And now that I am alive because of you, I want to help you live your life without fear or limits. Her breath caught. Jacob, he squeezed her hand gently. I want to offer you a job at Carter Industries. A real position. A real future. Not because you owe me anything, but because kindness deserves the chance to grow. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, why me? Jacob smiled softly. Because when the world saw a billionaire, you saw a man. And that changed everything. And as snow began to fall softly outside the hospital window, Emily realized she had not just survived the storm. She had found a new beginning inside it. This Emotional winter survival tale follows a young delivery worker and a hidden billionaire heir fighting to stay alive through a deadly Montana blizzard, blending danger, courage, and unexpected compassion into one of the most gripping millionaire stories you will ever hear. After a car crash leaves Emily stranded in the storm, she is rescued by a mysterious man who hides both his name and his past, pulling her into a night of fear, betrayal, and loyalty as they face the deadly pursuit of men sent to erase him before he can expose the truth behind his family's empire. As the storm closes in and danger tightens around them, the two form a powerful bond that transforms their fight for survival into a deeply human story about trust, sacrifice, and the kind of bravery that only appears when everything is at stake. This video is perfect for viewers who love cinematic drama, heartfelt character arcs, and millionaire stories with high emotional stakes, moral choices, and life-changing events. If you enjoy dramatic rescues, slow-burn connection, and stories where kindness becomes the turning point that reshapes two lives, this narrative will draw you in from the first moment to the final reveal. Stay until the end to experience how truth, courage, and compassion collide in a conclusion that honors the heart of classic millionaire stories while adding deeper emotional layers. And if you are searching for new millionaire stories that focus on humanity over wealth, this tale will stay with you long after the last scene fades. 1. A close-up cinematic moment inside a small wooden cabin lit only by a glowing fireplace. The American-born male lead with strong masculine features gently cups the face of the American-born female lead, their foreheads touching as snow falls outside the frosted window. Their expressions are intense, vulnerable, and full of emotional tension as warm firelight highlights their breath and the softness of the moment. Her eyes shine with gratitude and fear, his gaze protective and steady, showing a deep connection formed in the middle of a deadly storm. The scene captures warmth, danger, and intimacy all at once in rich cinematic detail. 2. A cinematic close-up of the American-born female lead during her everyday life. She stands beside her old pickup truck in a cold winter afternoon, wearing simple work clothes and holding a stack of delivery bags. Her face shows determination and quiet exhaustion, the wind brushing loose strands of hair across her cheeks. The city street behind her is slightly blurred, emphasizing her expression of resilience and independence. This scene presents her as a hard-working woman fighting through daily struggles with dignity and strength. 3. A cinematic close-up of the American-born male lead in his everyday world. He stands inside a modern glass-walled office at dusk, city lights reflecting behind him. His strong jawline, thoughtful eyes, and slightly undone collar convey both authority and hidden turmoil. He pulls off his tie with a weary expression, suggesting a man burdened by responsibility and searching for escape from a life filled with pressure. The mood is sophisticated, dramatic, and introspective. 4. A cinematic medium-close shot of both leads meeting outdoors for the first time in falling snow. The American-born male lead stands a respectful distance away, his expression curious yet guarded, while the American-born female lead faces him with a hint of confusion and vulnerability. Soft streetlight or car headlights illuminate the snowy air around them. Their breath misting in the cold creates a dreamy atmosphere. The moment feels accidental yet fateful, capturing the spark before their story truly begins. 5. A cinematic close-up of the American-born male lead supporting the American-born female lead as they walk together through heavy snow. His arm holds her securely while the other shields her from the harsh wind. Her face shows pain and effort, but also trust as she leans on him. Snow whirls around them in thick gusts, creating a dramatic, survival-driven atmosphere. Their closeness emphasizes partnership and emerging connection without revealing deeper plot developments. 6. A warm cinematic close-up inside the cabin, capturing a tender moment where the American-born male lead offers a steaming cup of water to the American-born female lead wrapped in a blanket. Firelight flickers across their faces, creating soft shadows and highlighting their growing bond. Her hands tremble slightly as she accepts the cup, while his expression is gentle, protective, and quietly emotional. The atmosphere radiates safety amidst the fierce winter storm outside. 7. A cinematic medium-close moment as both characters stand side by side at the cabin window. The American-born female lead gazes out at the swirling snow with a thoughtful, hopeful expression, while the American-born male lead stands close enough to suggest unspoken trust. Firelight reflects softly on their faces, contrasting with the dark, icy forest beyond the frosted glass. The scene feels still, intimate, and filled with anticipation, symbolizing unity against the storm. 8. A cinematic outdoor sunrise moment after the storm. the American-born male lead gently places his coat over the shoulders of the American-born female lead as they stand together in the snow. The soft pink gold light of dawn illuminates their faces, revealing relief, warmth, and quiet strength. Mountains and snow-covered pines glow in the distance, creating a hopeful, serene atmosphere. Their silhouettes close together suggest new beginnings without revealing details of the story.